Welcome back to Bible Shorts, episode 87, Jehoiakim Burns a Scroll. Now we've been learning about a man called Jeremiah, who was first called by God to be his prophet during the reign of King Josiah. But after Josiah died in a battle with the Egyptian pharaoh Necho, the Egyptians put one of Josiah's younger sons on the throne in Jerusalem to be a puppet king. And Jeremiah continued to be God's prophet. The new king, Jehoiakim, had to do what Pharaoh Necho wanted and pay the Egyptians lots of tribute. Then Pharaoh Necho and his army went north again to join forces with the Assyrians to battle the Babylonians who were gaining power. It wasn't successful. The king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, overpowered the Assyrians and the Egyptians at the Battle of Carchemish and then chased Necho back to the borders of Egypt. Then, on his way home, Nebuchadnezzar besieged Jerusalem, and King Jehoiakim changed sides from Egypt to Babylon to avoid the destruction of Jerusalem. Jehoiakim paid tribute from the treasury in Jerusalem, along with some temple artifacts, and handed over some of the royal family and nobility as hostages to the Babylonians. In the book of Daniel in the Old Testament, a young man called Daniel is described as being one of these people taken away to Babylon. During this time, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah. The Lord said, "Take a scroll and write on it all the words I have spoken to you concerning Israel, Judah, and all the other nations from the time I began speaking to you in the reign of Josiah until now." Perhaps when the people of Judah hear about every disaster I plan to inflict on them, they will each turn from their wicked ways. Then I will forgive their wickedness and their sin. So Jeremiah called Baruch his scribe, and while Jeremiah dictated all the words the Lord had spoken to him, Baruch wrote them on the scroll. Then Jeremiah told Baruch, "I am not allowed to go to the Lord's temple. So you go to the house of the Lord on a day of fasting and read to the people the words of the Lord that you wrote as I dictated. Perhaps they will bring their prayers before the Lord and will each turn from their wicked ways." Baruch did everything Jeremiah the prophet told him to do. From the room of a Levite in the upper courtyard at the entrance of the new gate of the temple, Baruch read to all the people the words of Jeremiah from the scroll. When a son of that Levite heard all the words of the Lord from the scroll, he went down to the royal palace where all the king's officials were sitting. After he told them everything he had heard Baruch read to the people from the scroll, the officials sent to Baruch, saying, "Bring the scroll from which you have read to the people and come to us." So Baruch came to them with the scroll in his hand, and they said to him, "Sit down, please, and read it to us." So Baruch read it to them. And when they heard all these words, they looked at each other in fear and said to Baruch, "We must report all these words to the king." Then they asked Baruch, "Tell us, how did you come to write all this? Did Jeremiah dictate it?" "Yes," Baruch replied. "He dictated all the words to me, and I wrote them in ink on the scroll." Then the officials said to Baruch, "You and Jeremiah, go and hide. Don't let anyone know where you are." Then they went to the king and reported everything to him. The king sent a servant called Jehudi to go back and get the scroll. And Jehudi brought it to read to the king and all the officials standing beside him. It was late in the year and cold, so the king sat in his winter apartment with a fire burning in the fire pot in front of him. Whenever Jehudi had read 3 or 4 columns of the scroll, the king cut them off with a scribe's knife and threw them into the fire pot until the entire scroll was burned in the fire. The king and all his attendants who heard all these words showed no fear, nor did they tear their clothes. Even though the officials urged the king not to burn the scroll, he would not listen to them. Instead, the king commanded that Baruch the scribe and Jeremiah the prophet should be arrested. But the Lord had hidden them. Then, after the king burned the scroll containing the words that Baruch had written at Jeremiah's dictation, the word of the Lord came again to Jeremiah. Take another scroll and write on it all the words that were on the first scroll, which Jehoiakim, king of Judah, burned up. And tell Jehoiakim, king of Judah, this is what the Lord says. You burned that scroll and asked, why did you write on it that the king of Babylon would certainly come and destroy this land? Therefore, this is what the Lord says to Jehoiakim, king of Judah. You will have no one to sit on the throne of David. I will bring on you and those living in Jerusalem and the people of Judah every disaster I pronounced, because you have not listened. So Jeremiah took another scroll and gave it to the scribe Baruch, and as Jeremiah dictated, Baruch wrote on it all the words of the scroll that Jehoiakim, king of Judah, had burned in the fire. And many similar words were added to them. Jehoiakim continued for 3 years as a vassal to the Babylonians. But after the Babylonians failed in an attempted invasion of Egypt, King Jehoiakim switched sides again back to the Egyptians. Big mistake. Then the Babylonian king invaded Judah and again laid siege to Jerusalem, a siege which lasted 3 months. There are conflicting stories in the Bible and in Jewish rabbinic literature as to when and how Jehoiakim dies. During the siege, after the siege, killed by Nebuchadnezzar himself. All we know for certain is that Jehoiakim was succeeded by a son. 3 months later, Nebuchadnezzar took that son, his household, and a large number of people to exile in Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar then installed Zedekiah, Jehoiakim's younger brother, as king. Another puppet king, more tribute. Will Zedekiah stay on the good side of the Babylonians? Well, what is Jeremiah doing? He's still in Jerusalem. He's still prophesying. He's still speaking out. And Zedekiah is refusing to listen to him. What happens next? Look for Bible Shorts, episode 88. Jeremiah is thrown in a cistern.